This podcast contains strong language and adult themes.
Date Night China explores life and love for better relationships in China. Every week, we hear from different guests and dive into dating, relationships, mental health, and how both expats and Chinese people connect with each other here in China.
Join the Date Night community through our podcast and events in Beijing and Shanghai, and catch up on all the latest stories on our official WeChat account.
Find our account on WeChat by searching Date Night China, no spaces, no capital letters. You can also join our WeChat group by adding Rachel, me, on WeChat. You can search Rachel Weiss 22, RACHEL WEISS 22.
And now for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Date Night China, Season 3.
I know, can you believe it?
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've been recording our musings on life and love.
Yes, quite some time, about 1 year.
And now you're British.
and also I'm British now, guys.
Yes.
So
welcome back. My name's Nathan.
And I am Rachel, and I'm not British. I am from the United States.
Yes, and I am also from the United States, and I don't want to elaborate any further. So yeah, it's been a while. Season 2 wrapped in early 2021. We spent the year just putting on a ton of events and growing online, and it's great to be coming back with an exciting lineup for Season 3, which should go on infinitum, really. You know, the last couple of seasons have been 20 episodes, 10 episodes, but now we just want to carry on.
Yeah, and it's exciting for us to be coming back, I guess, for many reasons, because we have been focusing on the events. We've expanded to Shanghai. We're also in Beijing, but we have many WeChat groups now with people from all over China, and we felt like this was a great time for us to recharge the podcast, because now it's 2022. It's been 2 years since we started Date Night China, almost 3 years now.
Almost.
And a lot has changed in China, just with the landscape of people who are here, especially like expats like us who have felt a big difference and a big shift. A lot of people left China, or they were trying to get back into China, but they're stuck. So it's really shifted like the communities that we feel here in Beijing and that other people in Shanghai have felt as well. And that's why for our first episode, we wanted to talk about what the dating landscape looks like now in 2022.
And one of the other big changes of the podcast this year and the media from now on, it will be more inclusive of many different voices. You'll be hearing lots more people on the podcast this year as we expand our media. So for this episode, we asked quite a few people about what they thought about the dating scene now and how it has changed. Even some new people that are fresh off the boat, that have only been in China for less than a year, so they've only known it through COVID, which is kind of nuts. It's such a shame, because I had a good 2 years before it all sort of like locked down, and even then it wasn't bad, but I still had a great time. 2018 to 2020. Yeah,
I do think it is wild that that's the only experience some people have had, because I came to China in 2015, and I had a good 4 or 5 years before. 5 years, before things got a bit crazy. So for me, it's like, oh my gosh, you guys never experienced traveling outside the city you moved to, and it's such a different place with COVID and...
Yeah, and we don't know what we're talking about because we've been dating for 2 years now.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. That joke never gets old.
It's my favorite joke, you guys. Nathan and I are dating. If anybody's new listening and checking in, that's a whole story. Maybe we'll get into another time. But that's why we're bringing on a lot of diverse voices from different people all around China. People who are single, people who are dating. We're going to be talking to professionals, all kinds of people around the scene, because we want to really represent what it's like dating here. We're also going to be talking to local Chinese people, but also expats. So it's going to be like a really diverse group of people.
Yeah, and our focus has shifted because when we first started, it was very much about how to foster good relationships, first dates, more of that single lifestyle. But as we've grown and as the brand has developed, we're more focused on good relationships, be it romantic ones or platonic ones? You know, how do you foster those, that social circle or that inner circle that can really make or break a happy life in China? So that's what we want to explore. So it's not just romance. We are looking at all types of relationships too.
Yeah, we used to be a bit more raunchy and very drunk when we've recorded our messages. So
now.
we've come so far.
It's a brand new day, everybody.
But don't worry, we're gonna be keeping some of the same fun vibes. We're gonna have some single people telling some crazy dating stories still. That's gonna be there, but we're also gonna be talking to a huge depth of people with all kinds of experiences like Nathan just mentioned.
So shall we get into it? So what have we got on, so how are we gonna start?
Yeah,
it's been a while since we just started anything. I'm a little bit like, well, what do we do? I don't know.
Let's just jump right in. So we asked some Date Night China listeners and our audience members a few different questions about dating now in 2022. So let's jump into the first question, which is, how has the dating landscape changed? And you're going to hear some stories from different people now.
Okay, I think we'll try and record that bit again. There we go.
My name is Mark Alan Karanja. Mark Alan Karanja Ngina, depending on whether you're looking at my passport or just me. I come from Nairobi, Kenya, and I've been in China for 4.5 years. It's going to be 5 years this summer. So let's just say 5 years. Oh my goodness, the landscape in Beijing, the landscape in Date Beijing, I will call it Date Beijing, has changed tremendously just from the time that I came. Because, you know, we have to remember that Beijing is one of the most dynamic cities you'll ever be in. People are always coming and going. But what happened in the last 2 years is there was a chilling effect. During COVID and when we went into the national lockdown, many of the students were locked out. Many of the teachers were locked out. And for the students, there was really no way to come back. So that entire demographic was almost scrapped. Then there were the teachers who had to try and come back, and that took maybe a year and a half. And in the year and a half, people had to figure out what they were doing with their lives. And I know quite a few relationships that broke down because of it. And then there were the rest of the professionals on this other side who were trying to make deal with the teaching population who they really never used to deal with, I would say, because, you know, they were like, I think people in Beijing really stick to cliques, but now it seemed like a free-for-all, and it almost feels like people are far more willing to compromise than they were before, in terms of who they're willing to date, what their compatibility is, what the expectations of the relationship are. Yeah, just generally people have completely shifted what they thought that they wanted in dating. And I think now people are more interested in date for the moment, whereas before you'd find people who were thinking, yeah, I enjoy this, but I also think this has long-term potential. I think now very few people are looking at relationships either with locals or other foreigners as relationships that have staying power. I think that's the biggest difference.
Okay, so that was Mark's take. He gave a good overview of how the scene has changed and the demographics, teachers, students, business.
Right. I do think that people in Beijing, I can't speak for the other cities, but I do think people here generally revolve around social circles. I think that's so true that people have certain areas and groups that they do hang out with.
Yeah, and that's what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. Certainly in the first 6 months, if you were here. And you realise that going home or going anywhere wasn't a great option. Not that you could. A lot of social circles contracted, didn't they? And then suddenly people that usually never meet are just suddenly seeing people out all the time, and it's like, how have I never met you before? And like, I've literally been here the same time as you has, but it's just because of the social circles have changed.
As small as Beijing is, sometimes you could be completely like not running into the people from different circles until COVID. Also, I think it's worth saying that these are expats that we've interviewed today. So this may not reflect the Chinese communities, but this is definitely all about the expats' perspectives and how people from these circles feel.
But I think Mark was right as well, is that it did put a spotlight on anybody that was in a relationship, or if COVID was potentially threatening the status quo between two people. It puts a spotlight and say, okay, what are we doing? Because I'm thinking about going home, or I'm stuck out. Should I wait? So you have seen a lot of people shift.
Yeah.
And that's been, well, I guess it's normal, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of weird because we got together during that time, so.
Yeah, I think relationships happened either two ways. It was the big defining moment of what's going on, and there was a lot of breakups that happened. It kind of pushed people to a certain point.
And you couldn't go on any new dates, so you settled for me. You're like, he's around. I keep seeing him every day, and he seems pretty keen.
Yeah, okay.
So
no, I think other people like us experience not a total acceleration, but I think people who were maybe kind of thinking about getting together, or had some stuff going on, it kind of accelerated. We've heard stories of people moving in very quickly together, or people on this faster timeline with a relationship during COVID, which is very interesting.
So what next? We're going to hear some personal stories next, right?
Yeah, let's go.
My name is Cale Holmes. I've lived in China for more than 3 years, and I'm from Texas by way of Washington, D.C. I remember this one girl I was kind of seeing when I first got to China. She went back to her home country, and she couldn't come back, and that's definitely a thing. But I feel the great thing about Beijing specifically is there's 20 million people here, and there's always people coming in and out, and it's pretty international too. So
My name is Aleese. I've lived in China for 3 years, and I am from Michigan in the United States. Well, I have had 11 months of a COVID-free China life, and dating was fun. It was exciting. And now, since the borders are closed and lots of people have left, it's just the same old. Which even me, a person who doesn't even date, I just, my friends just keep trying to hook me up with the same people. And I'm like, this isn't gonna work. So because I think there hasn't been a fresh batch of new menses, there's a lot of recycling happening. There's a lot of open relationships happening. People being like, yeah, that's my man, but you can sleep with him. And a lot of maybe men and women who are choosing not to date, or maybe date people that they wouldn't usually date, or give people they've rejected a second chance just because there ain't nobody else. Slim pickings.
My name is Mike. I'm from the great state of Texas, and I've only been in China for 5 months. I guess even at this point, I still can only compare it to what I was used to back home. So for me, it's been so much better. And I guess because it feels better, it's also given me just kind of a natural boost of confidence.
Yeah, so some people are really not so enthusiastic about what dating looks like in Beijing now. Like what Aleese was saying, even I think female expats, I've talked to a lot of my friends especially, have definitely felt the dating pool has shrunk so much.
Well, we see them when we run the events, and if we do a single mixer or a speed dating event, you speak, the majority, it is girls, isn't it?
Yes.
And they feel like that they're getting shortchanged with the dating pool. They say guys got it great, but girls just feel like there's just nobody coming in.
Yeah, I think that's a really hard thing usually, and especially in Beijing, Shanghai, you usually have people trickling in, exchanging, traveling a bit more here.
We need to speak to a new girl, because because Mike's it's completely different for Mike, but then is that because he's a guy? Mike's just fresh, he's a couple of months here, and he's like, yeah, this is amazing, this is great, lots of opportunities, meeting lots of people. But would a woman say that?
That's a great question. I mean, that's always the big question with China, you know, and something that we'll probably get into later. Like, who has it more difficult dating in China, men or women? And obviously, the answer is, of course, it depends, and it's what you're looking for.
Well, I think a lot of people will say women,
but a lot of people, I think, would definitely agree with women. So it's just interesting, yeah, how the time you've spent here so far and how you're dating and where you're dating and all of those things really impact your experience. Yeah. Let's go to our next question then, because there have been some studies showing that COVID has made people a little more intentional with their time or more clear about their goals. A lot of people don't want to waste time. They were doing Zoom dates. They really wanted to get down to it because they didn't want to, you know, have to waste a lot of time, or it made them feel more clear about their goals with life. They were put in such a weird pause for a while, and maybe they still feel that way, but they want to like at least feel with their dating that they're being more clear about who they want to spend time with and what they're looking for with dating.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like pushed the timeline of any like engagements. You know what I mean? People, it's like, well, we've been together a couple of years, so like, what are we doing? You know, like, or we said that we'd get married, or we'd work towards, you know, kids and stuff. You know, and that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it, in China?
Right.
If you're not from here.
Right. But that brings up a good point, though. And I think when we ask some of our China daters this question, some of them bring that up, though. Like, how and when do you bring that up? Because being in China, especially being expats in China, we're kind of used to this transient lifestyle. And some people are on different timelines and are looking for different things. So when do you bring that up? And how do you bring that up? Yeah.
So let's find out if COVID has made people more intentional and conscientious daters.
I'm Lebo, Aleese, from South Africa, Pretoria, and I've been in Beijing almost 4 years now. I think people are a lot more intentional, and I think a lot more ruthless with the editing process, where they maybe are just going, oh, I want this and I don't want that, and they are very like clear about it now, as opposed to before people would just go out and then just see if they vibe or get along. I guess it's become more efficient, but is that necessarily better?
Do you feel like catastrophic, potentially world-ending events make people more horny?
Yeah, I would say, you know, that whole fight or flight or fuck is a very real thing. It's the brain going, I have this pent up energy, this tension. I need to get rid of it somehow.
My name's Kelly. I'm from Canada originally, but moved here recently from Singapore, and I've been in China for just over a year. The guy has an idea of what he wants, and it might just be sex, and the girl's like, oh, I'm looking for a boyfriend. And that's where it's different, where I think a lot of times that we just have to stand up and say, this is who I am, this is what I want, and this is what I'm looking for, and not settle for anything less than that. So if you're not looking for an F-boy, you can easily not find the F-boys. You know, if you're willing to accept it, they're there, you know, and then I'm not putting blame on anybody, but I think you just have to be upfront of who you are as a person, I think what people need to do is this is what I did actually, is I wrote a list of what I'm looking for in a partner. And by doing that, I realized, by writing what I'm looking for, I realized what I'm not looking for as well. And in correlation with that, right? Just because you're like, okay, I don't smoke, I'm not looking for a smoker, right? You can't be racist, you can't be rude, you can't be sexist, you can't be like all these things, right? So by doing those things and finding out what you really want, you're eliminating all these things you don't want. And so hopefully it'll be easier to find. And yeah, like it sucks like going through and meeting these people and they turn out to be jerks or whatever like that, but it's worth it when you find a good partner. It really is. So you just have to go through it. But also, you should have a good vetting system as well.
Okay, so two sentiments that, well, I guess Lebo's was a little bit confusing, because on one hand he's saying that, yeah, people might be a little bit more intentional, and then the second is just down to either flight, fight, or fuck, which I think is a very accurate
you sounded
summation.
a little Scottish there.
Is it?
Yeah, you sounded a little Scottish.
I don't think you're very good at accents, so...
Oh, no, I'm terrible.
No, I think certainly the flight fighter folk, I mean, the people that did take a flight left in 2020. There weren't many fights, but a lot of effing.
Well,
you
yeah,
know?
a lot of fucking going
'Cause it
on.
just felt like the end of the world, you know. It just felt like
Oh yeah, it was
there
like nuts.
no
it was
rules.
madness for a while because
Yeah.
people were like, "What is going on? And how do I deal with this?" Nobody knew how to deal with it. Like, we all spent so much money on drinking and going out. And
That being said, though, what coming out of it, I think listening to Kelly, very good advice. I've never actually made a list. Have you ever made a list for like people that
No.
like a wish list?
no, I've never made a list. I've had friends do that though, and you know they write a checklist. And I think we've talked about this before though. I think that can be really good to define your standards and know what you want. I think internally I kind of have that. I haven't written things out, but I definitely had a standard or a checklist in my mind. Specifically, like if you're looking for
Like British, you know, ruggedly handsome, insanely funny, very witty.
oh look, there you are. So it worked, guys.
God, I bet people
Oh,
are throwing
people are
up.
gonna hate
people
this.
Are throwing up. Oh my
Sorry,
God.
everybody.
I'm not
but
sorry
I think
at all.
when I would like, it depends if you're dating casually or if you're dating seriously. It depends what you're looking for. So I think a checklist, if you are like, hey, I'm looking for somebody like a more serious partner versus.
See, I tell you what, I think I've noticed before, well, since 2020, is that the couples that we know now, like you notice that they're having those longer conversations. And normally I wouldn't really talk to couples about their long-term plans, but it just seems just like a regular part of the.
I feel like we
the
check in
process
with
now.
people about that quite
Yeah.
often. Like, how's it going? What's the China timeline? You know, and what are you both wanting, and what's your future with your jobs? I think COVID's made that happen more often.
Yeah, and I guess for the couples that are not having that conversation, they're just casual, and it's not going to be something that they work out, you know?
Yeah.
You know, because I do think it's made people more intentional. I think it's made couples more intentional, and then I think the prospects of, you know, if you are single, it's like getting into it with somebody. It's like, God, if another COVID, something on that scale happens again, you know, do you want to be wasting your time with somebody that you can't really see much of a future? I mean, it was the same anyway, but COVID's put like a very harsh spotlight on it, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. But I think a lot of people, like our next two clips, feel like it hasn't made people more intentional. If anything, they say, well, we'll hear what they say.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to disagree, but let's have a listen.
Are people more intentional with dating? I mean, I honestly don't know if people are intentional with dating because we are expats in a foreign country. Like, our lifestyle and the community is so transient. And usually that transiency doesn't correlate with long-term. What was the question?
People are being more intentional.
Oh yeah, intentional. Yes, yes. So that transiency doesn't always correlate with people being intentional. Okay, let me just try the whole sentence. There's just a lot of big words. Okay.
They sound great.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
yeah.
you. Thank
They
you.
sound great.
I just can't really get it together. I'm on glass 4 of the wine, and it's hot. Okay. What did I even say?
You were saying, I don't think people really are being more intentional, maybe, because expats are
Yes,
transient,
yes.
expat life.
Okay. Because expat life here in China is so transient, it's hard to really know if people are being intentional with the way that they date. I think social media has really hyped up this like travel couple lifestyle where like you meet someone in a foreign country and you're like with them and you like travel and make content and it looks so glorious. But I'm like, what? How? Where are you meeting this person? I don't understand, especially in a different country where people are just coming and going. It is so hard to find someone who has the same goals as you because we all come to this country with an idea in mind of how long we're going to stay and what we want to do here. And to find someone
who is like, willing to give up their goal to pursue something serious with you, or B, someone who has the same goal and long-term plans with you is like a needle in a haystack. It is extremely hard, especially with COVID, especially with the borders closed. Like everyone just wants to go home. And I'm not going home with you, sir, not to live with you forever. If you live like in the Maldives, maybe. If you live in one of those beautiful French islands, possibly. But if you are from Minnesota, I'm not going back there with you. No thanks. So intentional dating, I don't know, maybe. But I don't date. I told you guys this. I don't talk to people, I don't date, I don't be in the streets, so I don't know what these people are thinking.
What COVID did to all of us, I think, is it made us realize the volatility of our lives in China. Whereas before, people felt that they had some sort of security in China, that, you know, we all knew of the guy or the couple who came here in 1999 for a hiking trip, and they've been here ever since because they opened a yoga center and they made it work. I mean, we know all of these stories. But after COVID, after we saw just how quickly and how arbitrarily, or how seemingly arbitrarily, certain decisions about immigration can be made, I think it made it very clear to all of us that we are very transient beings in this city. Anything could happen to pull us out of the city. And yes, there were very many hookups before, but what I would think is, or rather what I will say, my pushback on that is, people, yes, had hookups, but they had hookups with people with whom they felt they had a lot more in common. What my gripe with people back then was they were turning potential mates into nothing but hookups. Whereas now, they're turning people who should just be hookups into potential mates. That is the difference. And that is the reason why in the past, before pre-COVID, all of us have known or have heard of the story of, you know, the Tinder date that became a 3-day weekend, that ended up becoming a living girlfriend, that ended up becoming, hey, we're getting married and we're moving back to the UK or the US or whatever. We all know of that story because there was a compatibility there. There was a lot more intentionality there because people were far more aware of the fact that there are a lot more fish in the sea. So I don't have to settle for anything. And if something catches my eye, I will settle on it. Whereas now, there aren't many fish in the sea. If you tell someone, if you're talking to a starving person, yes, you will look at them and you'll think that they're eating with much gusto, but maybe it's not because they like what you've put on the table, but just because they're dying of hunger, as opposed to someone who is doing fine dining and they look picky, but hey, they're enjoying what they're eating because it is their thought out choice. That's my difference.
Yeah, I feel like people need to evolve with the times, right? Because like no one dates the way we dated back in ancient Egypt or in like the 1800s or even in 1986. And so people, I think, have to appreciate like the way like social relationships are changing. The material relationship of the world is changing. The pandemic, I think, actually has changed the way people see intimacy and people understand intimacy. And I think not just the pandemic, but people like interacting with the world these days in general, with like, you know, my generation, like Gen Z folks and like Gen X folks, I think we're all kind of arriving at like different conclusions about what dating has to mean. And that's actually like a good thing that I think people should, you know, embrace. And like, I think being too resistant to it is a little bit a waste of time.
Okay, that was intense. Very good answers though.
So good. I think Aleese and Mark, I just love how they keep it real and they are themselves. I think with Aleese talking about how people, you know, are they being intentional? Like looking at social media, looking at all these different ways of people connecting.
I mean, it's a very high bar to like think, oh, you need to find somebody that's got the same interests and you build this. Yeah, you've got to have goals as a couple and work towards it. But
Right.
I think those like Instagram couples or like the stuff that we're doing with the podcast, it's a very it's an extreme of the spectrum, right? You know, you don't
yeah,
have to be.
I mean, 100%.
Like we know couples that are like working out together. You know what I mean? They run together, or they do something together. You know,
Right.
like they bike, or they do comedy. You know, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that it is different like than these social media. It's pushed at you all the time if you're on these social media sites. And it
Yeah.
does put this weird expectation like that you've got to meet your soulmate and you've got to both like want to like travel and be influencers together and like that's the dream.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like Aleese also said that she'd never go to like Minnesota. I've never been to Minnesota, so like if you were like, do you wanna
Hey,
go
don't you know?
to Minnesota, I'd be like, yeah, let's go. You know, sounds good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Mark, what do you think of what Mark said?
I really liked what he said actually about people are turning before in Beijing, people would turn like potential mates into hookups. I do feel like I saw that. Like you'd be like, hey, you and this person, like this casual person, you'd see your friends dating. You're
Spoiled
like,
for choice. People were like,
yeah,
next.
yeah, because I think you had the social media, like you could just like swipe on Tinder for somebody else, or just be like, I don't know, we're gonna be like friends with benefits or fuck buddies, but like actually they get along really well, you know. But now what Mark was saying is that people now are turning like potential hookups into potential mates, and like they're trying to make a long-term thing out of people that should just be hookups because they have less in common, less goals, less things that actually match up.
Yeah, just like more like a starving person at a restaurant, just happy to get anything.
Yeah,
ooh, it's bleak, isn't it?
It is pretty bleak. I don't know. It's so curious. I think we need to like go to QS one night and interview people like at 2 a.m. to see what they're looking for there. What is happening?
Well, I think if you find yourself at QS at 2 a.m, it's very clear what you're looking for. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I love Cale's assessment. You know, like I like how it skips. You know, it goes from Egyptian times to 1986, which again I feel called out because that's the year that I was born. But I didn't know that there wasn't many phases of romantic entanglements.
I think he hit the most important timeline.
They're
periods.
they're the ones
You
that
know,
stick out.
that's it.
With the
So-
Egyptians and 1986 and now. I can't think of anything else in
He's
history.
very
that was-
inclusive with his answer, I guess.
Pretty
Just
much.
trying to cover everything.
Yeah, and he did mention the Gen Zers,
Okay, so we have one last question that we asked these expats, and that is, what are your goals for dating in China this year? So
This is quite a mix. I kind of like this.
yeah, let's get into it.
One thing that I forecast for myself dating this year is being okay with silence. I noticed that like one of the things is like when there's like a lull, or like whether it's just like in one particular interaction or like in general, there's like not a lot happening. I feel like, I feel obligated to actually like invent or like kind of like reignite a spark. And sometimes like a friend told me, like sometimes like the most deepest kind of intimate moments happen when there's a lull or like some kind of silence. And so being at peace with that is something I want to implement in my dating life this year.
The hard part is we all have a life expectancy as an expat, right? We don't know. I could be on year 1 of 5 and I meet somebody who's on year 4 of 5, right? I've got friends who've left already and I just met them, right? And I know eventually somewhere down the line I might leave as well, right? So it's hard that way, but it's also one of those things where I think you go into a relationship, you should focus on the now, but you should have conversations about the future. And so at some point you should match up, whether or not you want kids, they want kids, whether you want to move to Thailand or wherever, right? Like so, and that's where you just have these conversations, right? And yes, it's hard to determine where you can have a great 5-year relationship with this person if you didn't talk about these future things, because like, oh, well, they want kids. Okay, well, are they ready for kids? Are they financially ready for kids? Whatever it is, right? So that's where it's a little tricky and tough, where I find them, if me, for example, if I just kept my mouth shut and wasn't so honest and wasn't so truthful about what I know my future is going to be, then I could have had some relationships, right? But I'm glad I didn't have those relationships, because I'm definitely happy with my current relationship, right? But you just have to have those conversations, and it's really important, but it's also hard because as a foreigner, you don't know. I don't know if they're just going to stop making visas. I don't know if my job's going to go, if China's going to close down, whatever it is, right? So that's where it's just tough, where you just have to just be present in the now, look for a little bit of the future, and then plan when you're ready.
I would say this is probably the big upside to me being so new here, but I know in the short amount of time that I'm going to be here, I want to make the most of it and build and establish and make as many connections and relationships as I can. So really, I mean, for me, it's just finding ways and avenues to get plugged in somewhere, involved, whatever, being part of certain groups on WeChat that you may only do that one thing every so often, but it just opens doors because you never know, you know, meeting someone once somewhere, how that's going to open up a door. Because, I mean, there have been, like, I'm a part of so many different WeChat groups already, even being here for 5 months.
My name is Valentine. I'm from the UK, and I've been in China for just over 2 years. I mean, the first recommendation obviously would be try and figure out your hobbies and your likes. Like, figure out what you like. For me, I like music, so I've tried to go to like open mics and also kind of networking. So I found, you know, going to, for example, you might know Nugget. Nugget does some open mics sometimes, and some just speakeasy bars, nice and chill, where they hold acoustics and stuff like that, or live bands. You go to Beer Smith, you know, Maybar. Those are places where they have live bands and there's, you know, live music. It's really good. It's a good vibe in there. In terms of networking, I'd go to this thing called Internations. They basically, you know, different people come, all ages. They come there, have a chat, and I think it's great. And I think that's going to places like that where you meet people who are quite chill, you know, like mature people, nice and chill, because that's the people you want to surround yourself with. I mean, by all means, if you want to be a party boy or party girl, you can, you know, there's so many clubs you can go to here. But I would say first thing, figure out your interests and then work from there. And then, you know, if you like music, go that way. If you like art, for example, hang around the art district and find more artsy places. But yeah, that's my advice.
My only advice to dating in China is just don't. Save yourself the headache, the drama, the stress, the nonsense, the catfishing, the craziness, the language barrier, the stereotypes, the racism, the BS. Just don't. Stay single, start a YouTube channel, get some brand deals, eat some good food, travel around the country, pay off your student loans, and the end.
Tune in next time for more dating advice from Date Night China, where we tell people not to date.
But you should date. but like, you should date. If you want to, I guess.
Dating for me 2022, I honestly, if I can be very, very brutally honest, I am honestly preparing myself for a winter of the soul, if that is not too grim to say. Just because, yeah, I've looked around, and there's just something about the idea of settling, knowing what I want in someone, and the fatigue that comes from even the idea of being on a dating app when you are someone who looks like me and sounds like me and presents like me. The whole body politique of it, and I don't feel like going into it. And I'm aiming for stillness. And if something finds me, then it finds me. But I don't think I will be actively searching for something, because at the same time, I like being a student of life, and I've been one of those people who's actively pursued relationships, actively pursued situationships, actively pursued hookups if and when they occur. But this time, you know, and they've never worked. So now I want to just try being still and being, first of all, relaxed in myself, and second of all, being comfortable in myself enough to say, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And if I see it with other people, if it happens for other people, I will be happy for them without necessarily wanting what they want, what they have, because that is another thing that I realize pushes a lot of us into bad situations that turn into situationships, that turn into vicious breakups, that turn into jaded hearts, that end up turning into me bringing my bullshit into the next relationship. And that is seeing something else that someone wants without realizing what exactly goes into it. Because let's be honest, we don't really share every single thing that we put into our relationship. In the same way that if you go to a restaurant, they will tell you some of the ingredients that they use, but they won't tell you everything. And we try to replicate that with someone because we think, well, if they did it, then I can do it. Yes, but no. Because in as much as, in as far as humans are unique, our interactions are also unique. And that couple working out doesn't mean that your coupling will work out, And I'm trying to learn to be able to be happy for people without necessarily wanting what they have. And saying to myself, that is great for them. It might not be for me. And until I find what is great for me, I am happy to just be here with myself.
I think what's interesting is, we're talking about intentions and being more intentional. And I think the takeaway, not to sound too cheesy, is that most people are like being more intentional with themselves and just self-reflecting a bit more, pausing from dating if they need to, which is a totally valid thing. Even though we are Date Night China, we are totally all for having positive experiences, but taking the time for yourself if you need to not date at this time.
Yeah, I think Aleese's clip at the end is probably not like the go-to tagline or advert that we probably want, but like I totally get the sentiment.
Yeah, 100%.
And you do, you are meeting a lot of people now that have just got dating fatigue, that are just sort of like done, And it's a shame because I still believe that dating can be very positive and there's still lots of opportunities out there. I think it just feels like it's bad. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to say, isn't it? Because I'm not out there on the scene.
We're not out there dating now. But I do think people sometimes recognize they need to take a step back from dating and take a pause. We recently did a poll about that actually a few months ago on our WeChat account, and it was, online dating fatigue. And I think that's a huge part too, that people get burnout from dating apps, from just like where are things going, not just the small dating pool, but how people are acting with each other. And they just get a bit tired, and they're either like, you know what, I'm just gonna take a beat and focus on myself and just do what makes me happy. I like what Aleese said. She's like, I'm just gonna like do what I want. She's on YouTube, so she's a YouTuber. She's doing brand deals. She's like living her best life in China. And I think that's what you got to focus on sometimes. Like, I'm just going to make the most for myself and just see what happens.
Exactly. And Cale's sentiment about, like enjoying the silences or being able to sit in the silences. And, that in itself is, again, it's talking about the relationship, but then reflecting on the work that you need to do internally, right? And I do think generally overall my takeaway from this first episode is that COVID, for a lot of people that have been looking for love or found love, it has been more intentional. I do think so. I really do. You have had flurries of the crazy it's the end of the world, so I think I'll just go on with this guy or this girl. But generally, I think people starting to do the work, and that may mean that they're a little bit pickier, but it's ultimately a good thing, I think so.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I agree with you that everybody's being more intentional. I think one of my favorite things seeing, though, is like the accidental couples that happened, kind of what we previously mentioned. Some couples that did happen and that they're still dating and going strong because they were like doing their self-work during quarantine time and like focusing on themselves, doing what they love doing, go to the hobbies and the activities that they like, and then they happen to meet somebody there. There have been some couples like that, and that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff.
Anyways, thanks guys for listening to Date Night China Season 3, Episode 1.
Yeah, we're back. Tell all your friends.
And this was a fun episode because, like you heard, we've canvassed lots of diverse stories and perspectives, and we're going to keep doing that all season long. We want to hear from more people all around China.
Yes, we do.
And so please get in touch with us. You can follow our WeChat account, search Date Night China on WeChat, or you can add me on WeChat, Rachel, if you search Rachel Weiss 22, RACHELWEISS 22.
So thanks again, and remember to like the episode and share it and subscribe and share. And is that all the things? I always forget
all the things. You did
Do all the things with the episode. Okay, that's it.
Yeah. Catch you guys on the next episode.
Okay, bye.
Bye.